Powerful Content Podcast, your go-to source for content creation, strategy, and business inspiration. I'm your host, Mel Daniels, content strategist, coach, and speaker, empowering women across the globe to grow their business with powerful content that connects, nurtures, and converts. So if you're ready to create standout content that gets you noticed and remembered, or build an aligned audience who love you and are ready to buy from you, you're in the right place. I believe that content has the power to connect us all. It's up to you how you use it. Listen in for genuine and insightful chats with guests, as well as practical tools and strategies from me. It's so lovely to have you here. Let's dive into the show. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to episode 54 of the Powerful Content Podcast, and yay to me! I've hit a year in the podcasting business. In some ways, it feels like yesterday that I dove into this crazy world of podcasting, but in some ways, it also feels like a lifetime. I've got a super special episode coming up next week. Mr. Meld, also known as Adam, my beautiful husband, is joining me for a Q&A where he'll be asking the questions. It should be a fun episode, so make sure you look out for that one. But this week I thought I'd share some lessons from a year of podcasting, as well as some reasons why you should start a podcast if you've been thinking about it for a while. So before I started, a podcast had been on my mind for quite some time. Several people had suggested that I give it a go, but it was a coach that I had at the time that gave me the final kick up the backside to make it happen. So whilst I don't want to actually physically kick you up the backside, I would love to be the encouraging voice in your ear that says go for it if you've been thinking about it. But before I get into the juicy bits of the episode, I wanted to take a step back to the reason why you should have a podcast in your content ecosystem. So first and foremost, it's one of those binge-worthy pieces of content that I believe is a must-have for your business. Not only does it set you up as the expert, but it helps creating all the other pieces of your content in your ecosystem. So whether it's a blog, a podcast, or a video, you need to have at least one of these in your content life. Now, the second thing is the strategy behind podcasting. Usually it's around the educational piece, but it can also be entertaining or inspiring. But above all, it really needs to be focused on the client journey and your overall objective for the month or quarter. If you look at the topics of my blogs and podcasts over a month, they'll have a similar theme. All of this content is leading my readers, my listeners, my followers to the same thing. This particular month has been about outsourcing. Next month is around my framework for consistent content. Then moving solely into focusing on consistency, which will hopefully lead you and my followers into open cart for my membership, The Content Effect. So instead of thinking up random topics and creating a blog or a podcast, there's a powerful purpose behind them. If you use them wisely, podcasts can be that powerful tool in your content ecosystem. Okay, that's enough of the seriousness. Let's move on to my lessons and the reasons why I think that you should start a podcast too if you've been thinking about it. The first one is I can do hard things, and I know you can too. I always had this belief that podcasts are super hard work, and don't get me wrong, they really, really are. But when you're committed to the purpose of your content, whatever it may be, then I truly believe that anything is possible. So when I committed to having a podcast, I went all in. I knew I had to lean into my content archetype of the planner. And if you don't know what your content archetype is, make sure you head on down to the show notes and do the quiz. You will gain insights into what your strengths are and how to use them to your advantage when it comes to creating content. So because I'm a planner, I felt like I had to take back some control by planning out all of my topics for the entire year and lining up all the guests and creating a checklist of what needed to be done. So after a year, I still find it hard. I find it uncomfortable, and I often procrastinate over recording, which I know is crazy. I get butterflies when I interview. And imposter syndrome constantly knocks at my door, but I continue to do it. I continue to podcast because I know that you're listening and you need to hear my beautiful message. And I know that your ideal client needs to hear your message as well. Which kind of leads me to the second lesson, which is about talking about your message and how it helps you refine it and feel more confident with it as well. So as a serial guest on other people's podcasts, I had plenty of practice talking about what I believe when it comes to content marketing, but not having that safety net of someone asking you the questions can be a little bit daunting. So I know from a year of podcasting that the more I talk about what I do and what I believe, the more my message becomes known and the more comfortable and confident I feel with it as well. And I feel this the most really in my membership, The Content Effect. Not only can I show up for my members with more clarity, I know what I teach is sinking in as they can feed it back to me quite clearly what the message is inside the membership. Okay, so lesson number 3. This is a hard one to learn, but it's okay to make mistakes because when it comes to podcasting, there's always editing, and really, who notices anyway? Sometimes we really put an emphasis on perfectionism when it comes to creating our content. And I really encourage you to kind of let that go a little bit, because as much as we like to think that our ideal client hangs off every word we say and waits for every word we say, sometimes they miss it. Sometimes they miss that post. Sometimes they miss that email. Sometimes they miss that podcast episode. And did they even notice it? Like the time I totally forgot to put the intro and outro on an episode before I uploaded it. Did you even notice that I forgot to do that? Like the time, or actually times, I've used my headphone mic instead of my podcast mic. Did you notice? And like the couple of times I've interviewed someone and totally lost my words. I felt like a total deal. But mistakes are a part of learning, right? They're opportunities to do things differently in the future, or they're there to help us become more resilient or learn something new about ourselves. I love to say that mistakes aren't full stops, they're commas. So lesson number 4 is podcasting is a great tool for connecting and nurturing. If you're this far into the Powerful Content podcast, you'll know that I live and breathe the client journey. And when it comes to moving people through that journey with you, a podcast does wonders for that first phase connection and then the third phase nurture. So think about why you're here and listening to this podcast. It's probably because you're keen to learn and get to know more about the way I like to approach things. Hopefully, you're also thinking of working with me, so it gives you the opportunity to see what it would be like to hang out with me. And that's all about the nurturing. So lesson number 5 is, it is time consuming. Be prepared for a podcast to take up time, and a lot of it, especially if you don't have a team or outsource the editing. I am super blessed to have someone on my side who does all the techie stuff to get this podcast out into the world, like uploading it, doing the show notes, publishing, promoting on socials. So that really leaves me with the planning, the recording, and the editing, which would easily take up, I would guesstimate, 2 hours per week for my weekly episodes. So if you added in all the other pieces, it would probably take at least 3 hours per week. So either you need to be super efficient, do episodes less often, or grab some help. Lesson number 6, it's as much about me as it is about you. Now, this is an interesting one. If you've been hanging out here on the podcast for any number of episodes, you'll know that whilst I believe that content marketing strongly revolves around a good understanding of who you're talking to and who you want to work with, that's the who, it also takes into consideration the you. And whilst I love you to bits, and I am super grateful that you're here listening to this podcast, I also acknowledge that this is about doing something for me, something that gets me seen and heard and positions me as an upcoming thought leader in the space of content marketing. It's been about my personal growth over the past year, getting out of my own way and becoming a more confident woman in business. And lastly, lesson number 7, podcasts can be fun and rewarding. I have got to meet and chat with some absolutely inspirational women. And I hope that you've enjoyed these episodes as well with my guests. But there is such a broad array of inspirational women out there that we can connect with, that we can learn from. And I have been truly, truly blessed to know so many of them and have so many on the podcast. And just quietly, I've got a few really great ones lined up for you too. As part of this ability to chat with these truly inspirational women, it has evolved in many situations to different collaborations. So that's included things like being a part of their community or talking to their communities or talking to their memberships or masterminds. There has just been some amazing collaborations that have come as a result of this podcast. And lastly, I really think that podcasting fills my heart. It fills my heart with joy, not only to talk to all these amazing inspirational women, but it really is in line with my values of connection and community. So that's what really makes it easier for me to show up every week to bring you these podcasts. So what do you think? Is a podcast on your horizon this year? I truly, truly hope so. If it is, and the thought of not having enough ideas or confidence freaks you out a little bit, then I'd love to invite you to come and join the Content Effect. Doors are currently closed at the time of recording, but it will not be long and they will be open again. So jump on the wait list for some insider scoops plus a very special thank you gift. Inside the Content Effect, you'll learn how to really lean into your beliefs with your content to become that go-to expert, like podcasting helps you to become. You will be able to unlock consistent content that positions you as a thought leader. You'll be able to organize your ideas in a very logical way that takes your ideal client from not knowing anything about you all the way through to becoming that raving fan. And you'll become more strategic, more purposeful and powerful with your content so that you will get noticed and remembered. So jump on down to the show notes and you'll find the link to come and join us on the waitlist. And don't forget, stay tuned for next week's episode. You're in for a special treat. Talk soon. Thanks so much for listening. That's it for another week. To get more powerful content in your life, make sure you're following along on socials. My handle is @meldbusiness. And just in case you're wondering, the groovy music for this podcast was created by Just Here on SoundCloud. I'd also be super grateful if you took a moment to rate and review this podcast so more amazing women like you can experience the power of content. And if you're like, hell Mel, stop talking, I'm ready to work with you now, here's how we can work some powerful content magic together. Firstly, come and join the Content Effect, my membership inspiring women with service-based businesses to ditch the content chaos and start creating stand-out content that gets you noticed and makes sales. You can join us by using the link in the show notes or just Google the Content Effect. The second way we can work together is via my one-on-one packages. We can create a sustainable content strategy or start to build out your client journey. It's up to you. Hop on over to meldbusinessservices.com.au/services to find out more. Until next time, have a beautiful week and embrace the power of your content.